New shirt. Okay. So we are continuing the process of painting our skeleton mini. Now, something I noticed in the cold, harsh light of day is that I messed up um, a little bit, not fundamentally. If I get this in close enough, you can see if you look at this arm on the skeleton, you see the gray shading in between the two arm bones, the tibia and the fibia, maybe. But if you look at the arm forward holding the bow, I completely missed that with the wash. It just doesn't have that same shadow when you're looking at it in a hard light. Let me see if I can adjust this real quick just to give you all real sense. Like you can still see the shading, but it just gets washed out with that other arm. So we are going to fix it. And then we're going to work on painting the bow, the quiver, the arrows, and the strap. So first thing we need to do is remake the wash. So shake the paint. Not going to forget the lesson I learned last time. And then we're going to make the wash. So remember, the ratio is 1 drop of paint to 4 drops of water. So clean my palette during the day today. Important to keep a tidy home. There we go. Going to get my flat brush. Get it nice and wet. Make sure I don't have any residual paint on there, which looking good. And now we're going to make the wash. And I noticed the reason I had to add so many drops of water when I was making the wash first time, I wasn't really letting all of the water that I get on the brush collect and drop. I was kind of forcing the issue. So I'm just holding it completely vertically. I'm holding it completely vertically and just letting the paint do the work, or the gravity do the work when it comes to getting the paint nice and diluted. So, and you notice there, I use the back of my brush to mix it. That's just a way to preserve the integrity of your brush bristles if you're not really vigorously jamming it into the paint. It's not a huge issue, but it's a way that you can protect your bristles and give them plenty of life. But I'm being very gentle. Another big thing when you're creating a wash or just diluting paints, you notice I'm flicking away to really get a good sense of how diluted the paint is and if I'm right at that wash status. Not quite there yet. Okay, that's 8 drops of water. So let's see where we're at now. It's looking pretty good, but I want it to be a little bit more diluted. Clean my brush off a bit. Yeah, just let gravity do the work when you're creating these drops. I was getting it real close to the paint and trying to force the issue rather than having a little bit of patience. And that's just a character flaw of me. So I'm sure you did not make the same mistakes I did. Sorry about my dogs in the background. Okay, that's getting a good kind of transparency as soon as I flick it away. So I think we're good to wash. And we're just doing the forearm. I only used 1 drop of paint. It seems like there's a lot here for one little section of arm, but that's primarily because I added so much water. So we're just gonna come in and get this arm and the fingers. Apologies about my dogs. I will take care of them in a moment. And this is going to take a little bit of time. Let me get that light back to where you all can see what I'm doing. And I can see what I'm doing. It's going to take a little bit of time for this wash to dry. Once again, because it's so wet. But should not be a big issue. If you have too much wash in there, just get the wash off of your brush and go over it again. Like dry your brush off. And that will collect some of that excess wash because you want it to be down in there, but you don't want it to pool because that's going to really elongate your drying time. You can make sure I hit the back of the arm as well. I noticed that I missed that when I was looking at the mini this morning and examining my hard work. Okay. Well, I can look at that, so I'm going to let that dry, and I'll be right back. Okay, so while the arm is wrapping up drying, before I can really go in and do the dry brush base color and dry brush highlight, we're going to go ahead and knock out the quiver and the strap on the skeleton's chest. Now these are, I mean, the quiver is fairly big, but the strap is going to be a little bit more detail oriented. So we are going to bust out for the first time our detail brush. But I'm going to knock out the quiver first and then I'll swap over. So what we're going to do in terms of colors is our base color is going to be Harvest Brown. And then for our wash, we are going to do 4 drops of water to 1 drop of pure black. And then we are going to obviously dry brush with the base color again, Harvest Brown. And then we're going to dry brush the highlight color, which is Leather Brown. So that is where we are going with this. So first step is to put the paint. No, it's to shake it. You got to shake the paint really well. This is the first time we're using this paint, so it's been sitting in the box unshaken all this time. We're doing Harvest Brown. And we're painting a very small area, so I would just recommend doing your best. See what happened there? Some of the paint was, I guess, dried in the tip or something. I don't know. But now we have very watery, indicative of not being shaken well enough, drop on our palette. So I'm going to clean that up just so, because we're going to be using a lot of real estate on our palette with doing the quiver and chest strap, and then also hopping in to finish up that arm once the wash is done drying. So hopefully this Harvest Brown can be a little bit more cooperative. Beautiful. That's what I like to see. Okay. So starting out with our flat brush, we're going to try this out. A wiser man would probably tell you, or lady, wiser person in general, would tell you to use your detail brush for this. I'm going to try to cover most of it using my flat brush and then come back in with my detail brush to get the edges and the strap. Now, something to keep in mind, when we are wrapping up this mini, you're going to see this raised area right here. That is actually going to be silver. So it's fine if you have some overlap, but just try to stay above and below that, because there's going to be a silver metal line right there. So it'll just be a little bit easier if you're not having to completely paint over Harvest Brown with your nice polished silver. So got this, and let's paint. So we're just being really gentle, getting good coverage everywhere, so we're not having to go back like I had to on the coccyx of this skeleton earlier. But this is where you're really starting to hit that point of, I mean, we have painted the body of the skeleton, so any brown that gets on there is going to be a problem. So I'm trying to find the right angle to come in for this. And also the arrow shafts are going to be a different color than what we're painting the quiver. So once again, you want to get all the way up there and even overlap a little bit to where you're getting the top of the quiver. Just do your best to not hit those arrow shafts up at the top. But don't be afraid to get close. Like if you saw right there what I just covered up, I was kind of scared of that metal strap and hadn't gotten a good coat of paint all the way down to it, which is the last thing that we want. I want to make sure in an ideal world we're not having to go back and retouch things up. And see how I globbed a lot of paint on that there. So I'm going to get paint off my brush, wet it, wash it, and try to clean some of that up, spread around the love. And this is just my own personal issues, but I feel like I'm seeing, compared to this side, feel like I'm getting a lot of seeing through the paint, which may mean that I didn't end up shaking it up as much as I should have, but we'll see how it looks. Okay. Go ahead and hit the bottom of the quiver. Try my best to make sure that I keep this in line of sight for you all to where you can see what I'm doing. And after this episode, if you'd like the camera to be closer, so you have better sight on what I'm doing, let me know. Might be helpful if I paint it on camera for you guys to see. Okay, so we've got pretty good coverage, but I do not want to tempt fate anymore. I'm shocked I did not get any brown paint on those bones. So I'm gonna stop tempting fate and pull out our detail brush. But before I do that, I'm gonna make sure that this brush is nice and clean. Do my best to get all the paint out of there because you don't want to come back to a stiff brush that you end up having to go out and get brush cleaner. As long as you take care of your brushes while you're painting, you should always just be able to use some water. You shouldn't need to go out and buy expensive paintbrush cleaner to salvage a brush if you've taken care of it up to this point. So I'm going to slide this in and grab the scariest brush in my arsenal, the detail brush, because I feel like I have shaky hands, but we're going to see if I do. So now we're getting right up in there. And I apologize if I don't talk a lot during this section of painting. I am honest to goodness using every bit of concentration I can muster to not mess this up. It's also important to note your lighting situation because I'm having to fight a little bit with the angle that I'm holding the mini in relation to where my hand wants to go and where the light is and where the camera is. So I apologize if this isn't the super best angle, but you get the idea of what I'm trying to do. Checking the bottom here. This is the one downside of using some kind of apparatus, especially one as big as I've chosen to hold on to the mini with, because it makes it a little bit difficult to see the bottom of the mini from time to time. Oh boy, and I have a lot of paint on here, so I'm going to try to clean this up a little without just completely mucking everything up. But if you do muck it up, that's fine. You can always go back and fix it. But we'll say it is easier to go back and apply more paint after it's dried than trying to take paint off, because that requires a lot more of an intense process. So now I'm going to try to identify where this strap is that I'm wanting to paint. So we got some in the armpit over here on the back side, just trying to show you as best I can, right underneath that back arm. And then obviously it goes up where the hand is, so we don't need to worry about that. And then up over the shoulder. And if you need a good reference guide, in the manual that came with the mini kit, if you look, you can see there's a finished product here. So you can see, okay, right from the hand up over the shoulder, back to the quiver. So this is the part I've been nervous about since literally we started this. So here we go. Apologize once again if I'm not the most entertaining person for this segment, but I am really focused on making my mini not suck, which you should be as well. There's a lot of mini painting brushes out there that are triangular shape. These are round shaped, which I think I'm going to be getting some triangle shaped brushes in the near future just to kind of test out the difference and really see whether or not I'm going to adjust this light a bit more. It might get a little intense on either my face or the mini. Apologies, but I'm having a hard time seeing strap. I want to make sure we get this thing good and covered. Because the last thing you want is half a brown strap and half an either base white strap or a bone colored strap. And now a braver person, I'm looking at my reference picture here. Braver person would go in and try to hit the side of the strap, trying to debate on how brave I'm feeling. Need to make sure I hit this little divot down here where the strap hits the quiver. And a lot of you might think, well, that's such a tiny little spot. Why should we really concern ourselves with such a tiny little detail like that? Well, I mean, for one, the devil's in the details. That's why you look at some minis and you're just mind blown because of the details. I'm not trying to do half-hearted work here. Just because you're a beginner doesn't mean you can't strive to do everything you can to be as good as you can be. But also, because that's where our wash is really going to hit, is in those divots. Once again, that's just going to be a level of detail that people will look and be like, holy crap, that looks amazing. So I've hit the quiver, I've hit the strap. Looking pretty good, if I do say so myself. Now, obviously, we didn't go nuts with the paint. I can already tell that the paint on the quiver where we originally started is really, it might be completely dry by this point. But you know what else is dry? Our front arm. So we're going to wash our detail brush off. We're going to go ahead and hit the dry brushing on that forearm while the quiver and strap dry. And you can do it however you want when it comes time to paint minis not along with me. But I'm going to be doing each element, kind of like how we did the body, the skeleton, all at once, every layer of that. And then we moved on to the quiver and strap with the exception of this forearm. We're going to come back and then we're going to do the wash for the quiver and strap, and then do the dry brushing on that. And then we'll move on to either the bow or the grass or the arrowhead or the feathers or whatever. So we're going to be doing every element top down and before we move on to the next thing. Some people may want to do all of the base colors, then do all of the washes, then all the dry brushing. It's a personal preference of whichever method works best for you. So if you find the way that I'm doing it really tedious, like you're going one part of the mini at a time, then when you paint your next mini on your own, try it doing all the base coat, all the washing, all the highlights, and see if that's a little bit more fun for you, because ultimately that's what you want, is for this to be enjoyable. So yeah, pull this mini up here. You can really see I'm happy with the strap, even on the under. And you can see down here, I mean, the mold seam right here under there is just atrocious once you get the wash on there. So hopefully the next mini that we paint will be able to go over dealing with that. We'll see. So yeah, we're going to do our dry brushing, which means we get our flat brush back out. Hello, old friend. Feeling good. No paint on there. We're not going to be dry brushing brown onto these white bones. So what we need to do first is our desert sand, which is our base color. Shake it up. It's our base color highlight. Well, no, base color dry brush. Can't be a base color highlight. It's either a base color or a highlight. And once again, we're just going to try our best to just get the least amount of paint that we need because we are painting a very small section, and on top of that we are dry brushing, so we are using such a incredibly small amount of paint. So yeah, we're just getting the tip of our brush coated in paint there. We're going to go down, getting most of the paint off there, dab the tip. Still got a little bit on there. And we dry brush. I'm going to go over and hit it one more time, just to make sure I get a good base back on there. But remember, even though it doesn't seem like we're doing a whole lot right now with the dry brushing, if you have too much paint on there, you're going to undo all the hard work you did with washing. And then you'll have to go back and wash it, and then try to dry brush again and wash and dry brush, and it'll be not a blast to go back and forth like that and feel like you're undoing your own hard work. You want to do things smartly so you can always be moving forward. Okay, so next, because the dry brush, by the time we get this paint shaken and put on our palette, it'll be dry again. Because we were dry brushing, we were using a very little amount of paint. Shaking this up, Dragon White is what we're doing for the highlight of our bones. Once again, I mean, just the tiniest of drops that I can manage to get out of there. Because I want this paint to last me a decent amount of time. I don't want to have to go buy new paint every week. So yeah, just a little bit on the tip. Boom, boom. Dab the tip. Test it on my finger. Oh yeah, thank goodness I tested that, because I still have a whole lot of paint. There we go. Just got a faint amount there. Hit it. And on these, the finger bones and the forearm, we're going up and down on the side to really accent the shading that we got in there. But for the upper arm, we're just going to hit perpendicularly on the top to give it that good light source kind of highlight. And that will take it to another level for you. Okay, so yeah, I am much happier with that arm now that we went back and did that. It honestly, it's such a tiny part, but it is so prominent. If I had discovered like the back of this arm I didn't get good shading on, I may not have worried about it as much, but this thing, I mean, it's holding the bow, it's extended out. It's one of the first things that you're gonna see, and it just didn't match the quality of the rest of the mini that I was going for. And you can see now, compared to earlier, I know the light is throwing some of the shadows, but that shading in there matches the quality that we got on the back arm earlier. So I'm happy with that. And now let's go ahead and, yep, we are dry on the quiver. So, and I know that seemed really cavalier of me to just smash my thumb on there, but I mean, you can tell the paint's not shiny anymore. And that's the biggest thing. It's a very good matte color, which indicates to me that it's probably dry. I just lightly, yes, I'm from Oklahoma. I just lightly touched my thumb on the back just to make sure the paint wasn't sticky at all, just to ensure that everything was okay. So I'm going to dab up my old wash with a napkin. One moment. Just because I'm about to put another wash down, and I don't want to risk my washes mixing, because this is Mountain Stone wash, not pure black wash, which sounds like pure backwash, which is disgusting. So shake up our pure black. We want to make sure that we have a good, not watery drop of paint before we water it down. So, okay, let's see how this goes. Hopefully we won't have that weird thing that we had happen with the Harvest Brown. It's awfully watery. So you're starting to get a sense of how much you really need to shake up these paints before they are ready to go, and how vigorously you need to shake them like I am. So, yeah, because the last thing you want is for impatience, or I almost said laziness, but obviously, like, then I wasn't being lazy. I was just being impatient. I wasn't thinking about how long I'd been shaking it, how hard I'd been shaking it. So I don't want to call that laziness on my part or yours if you just had the same thing happen. You just need to acknowledge when something's not working right and fix it. So let's try it again. Much better. I think still seems a little watery. So we're going to really go to town with the paint shaking. Clean up this inferior blob of paint. Much, 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 much better. I'm going to clean up the tip of my paint bottle there, just so it doesn't dry and come back to haunt me the next time I need to use my pure black, which will be before we finish this mini. So now we need to get our water and get 4 drops. Felt like a drop came out there. Yeah, there it is. 2, 3, 4. Now let's mix this up and see if it's got the consistency we're looking for. One important thing to note when you are using water to dilute your paints, that's going to cause the pigments in the paint to drop. And so you don't, like with washes, you don't want to be real gingerly like you are with dry brushing. You want to make sure you get down on the palette and get the acrylic pigments on your brush. Otherwise, you run the risk of just getting kind of colored water, but it's not going to have a strong pigment to it. And that is going to cause you to have an inferior wash. Once again, guys, this is trial and error. Some of you may be watching and saying, oh, the wash is perfect. Don't do anything more. But based on what I've seen in terms of what you're looking for with a wash, it still seems a bit too thick. So you'll notice I'm using my flat brush right now to mix this wash, test it, make sure it's going to work for me. It's looking pretty good now. But I'm actually going to use my detail brush to actually apply the wash, just because I don't want to be glopping it on. I don't want to get pure black wash all over the skeleton bones, because we've already washed that with mountain stone and it's got a good gray shade to it. I would hate to mess that up. So my wash is kind of spidering out everywhere. So I'm going to go back to my original spot where I created the wash and start applying it. And what you're going to see is, ideally, like you saw just what happened, I applied the wash up here and it fell into the crevices, which is exactly what you're going for. You see how much is kind of pooling up here right now, and it just runs down, gets in these crevices. Exactly what we want. And you'll notice some of the black is still sticking up here, but that's what the dry brushing that we're going to do here in a bit is for. is kind of undoing that. But I do want to give it a good shading. I'm real. And the top of the shoulder is just what makes me nervous constantly. I got a lot pooling up right here. What I'm going to do, because I don't want a big black blob down there, I dried off my detail brush and just went in and almost used it as a sponge. Just got some of that to come back up with me. Just because I don't want to overdo it. I don't want these big black splotches on the back. This is actually a technique that I saw somebody talk about, is when you're wanting your shading to fall to certain areas, you just paint your wash at the top, like highest point. Like, I'm going to hold it vertically, but I'm just going to put some wash on the top edge of the quiver. What that's going to do is let gravity do its job. All that wash is naturally going to fall down to where our little metal piece is going to be. And that's going to give us an interesting look. And I cannot forget to go ahead and wash the bottom of the quiver. Okay. So we got our wash on the quiver and the chest strap. Got a lot pooling over here though. So I'm going to go back in like I talked about before, just dab my brush dry after getting the wash off of there, and just boom, like a sponge, soak it up, dry it off, soak up a little bit more because it was starting to fall into the rib cage. Once again, that's not exactly what we want to happen. Okay. So, oh, I got a lot. See, some of these ribs just caught that wash and are carrying it like crazy. So I'm going to do my best to use my dry brush to get those. So we're already done the dry brush highlighting on our skeleton. So we don't want a black wash to come in there and undo that hard work. Okay. So we're going to let that dry, and hopefully the back of that rib cage wasn't goofed up too much, because I love the back of that rib cage. Or it might look even better with some black wash in between those ribs, really making it pop more. We will see. Because I didn't apply the wash to those ribs, so it shouldn't have hurt our dry brushing at all, but we will see. So let's examine a couple things here. That forearm still looks really good. I ended up very happy with that. So yeah, as you all probably remember from washing the entire skeleton body, the wash takes the most time to dry. So we're going to take a break and come back and check out and see how it looks here in a second. All right, everybody. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video where we began to look at some of the details. That strap going across the skeleton's chest required a good amount of concentration and focus. And that's really the hardest part for me in terms of mini painting, is really keeping that focus, keeping a steady hand. So I hope that it went well for you all. And we're going to let that wash dry and then come back and keep going on the minty, keep going on the mini and getting those details finished out and finishing it up.